So obviously this is the handle part of the sheet. So again, this demo is to show you all how to embellish this handle. I brought in, don't worry, it's a brand new razor. It's not gross. But there's details to this razor. So just like we passed this knob around, I want you all to look at this. There's cavities on the bottom. You can guess why there's a cavity on the bottom here. It's cheaper, molding. This handle that we have in SolidWorks here, I'll be honest, is not realistic. You're never going to mold a piece of plastic that's this thick. If you ever see a handle that's completely solid, chances are it's cast metal, or it's like Formica or some like weird, like Bakelite, some kind of older plastic. Or yes, it's two parts and it's hollow inside. But more often than not, you will see handles that actually have like, I've heard them referred to as coin patterns, and I'll show you, that'll be clear in a minute. I'll show you how to build that. But I am going to pass this razor on. You also notice that there's these like little dots on here. So these are the kind of embellishments that I hope you're going to make to the handles that you build. So as that's getting passed around, I will just start on this demo sheet. So again, this asks you to start by rolling the bar up above the mirror so that you can edit it in halves. It asks you to create a new sketch on the front plane. This is once again where it's useful to pull, or why it's useful to have a master sketch, because I'm going to use this line again, and I'm going to hit C to convert entities, or I'm going to click on this up here. I'm going to hit Alt-V to hide those old sketches. I want everyone to pay attention for a second. So this line that I copied over, this is once again, I'm asking you to click on these points and drag them. So I'm going to click on this point and drag it till it's loose. Up here, when you try and drag it, it's going to give you an error first. It says cannot drag. It's fixed. If you click and drag it again a second time, it should loosen up. So again, it's clicking on the vertice and just like dragging it left and right. It's kind of stupid, silly. This is to introduce another new feature which I had just glossed over on the knob at the end of the knob portion. We now have this line. This is the new feature here. It's called split. Split is very similar. There are similarities in split to an extrude cut. In fact, we could have done this with an extrude cut with like a fin feature. Split just is a bit, it is as described. It splits a body. So if I exit this sketch, and I go to this new feature, I click on split. It's over here on the far right. It's asking you, hey, what tools do you want to trim this with? In this instance, we're going to select the sketch we just made. And now down here, it says resulting bodies. So it is using this sketch as a splitting tool, like a curved knife edge. Here it's saying, what do you want to have left over? You click in this box here to highlight it, and then you click on either side of the sketch. And you'll notice that it adds another one. It creates a checkbox. You just go ahead and click check. And now you'll notice I have two bodies up here from one split command. So if I hide this, it's now missing. So again, it's like split is a zero thickness cut is what it is. It is possible, if that's confusing to you, and I'll show you this other way real quick. It is possible to take this line, say extrude cut, and check this thin feature, and then just set this thinness to like something incredibly small, like 0.001. It is important also here to set this to through all both. It's asking you, hey, do you want to get rid of one of the bodies? No, you want to keep both. This gives you the same effect as split. Split's just a little bit quicker, smoother, and is technically a zero thickness cut, whereas a thin cut has thickness to it. So again, sketch line, click on either side of it. We have now split our handle in half. So that is the first thing it asks you to do. The next step is very similar to what we just did on the knob. I just created a new sketch on this right plane. So again, select the right plane, Alt-S. Again, if it's a weird orientation, Alt-N makes you look at it. Here I have, this sheet asks that everyone set up a sketch that looks roughly like this. Vertical line. These are for construction. And now we're going to have an arc here that goes, this is again similar to what we just did with the bezel and the knob. This arc passes just below the bottom of the handle here. Again, these control it. So I'm going to exit out of this. Alt V to make sure we can see everything. If you were having trouble selecting it before, I believe the solution for Macs was to go to View, Hide Show, and to make sure that sketches are checked here. You want to make sure this is depressed. And now depressed as in push down, not as in sad. And then here you want to go to Insert. This is, again, the other new thing we've learned. Reference Geometry Plane. First reference, we're going to select the arc. Next reference, we're going to select the points. And now, once again, we have a plane that's on this arc. We can click check. Thank you. And now we have a plane conveniently to sketch our profile. So again, click on the plane, Alt-S to create a sketch, Alt-N to look at it, O to create a circle. Select the center here. This is probably too big. You can change the size. Exit out of this, and once again, this is all repetitive to the knob. In features, we're going to do a swept cut. I was already selecting the circle. That's why it loaded here as the profile. Then select this as the path. It looks like it's intersecting just right on here. Okay, so now another new command. It's the final new command of today. What we're going to do is in the patterns here, there is something called, which one did I use? Curve-driven pattern. It's on the bottom left box. Sketch-driven pattern is another option, but I think in this instance, curve-driven pattern worked better. It is as described. It is a pattern driven by a curve. So here where it prompts you for direction, I would propose that you select a line that's close to the feature you want to pattern. So in this instance, it's the base of my fillet. You could also select this cut line, the split line we did earlier. And now when it comes to features to select, I can expand my tree by clicking on this triangle here and clicking on sweep cut. Now you'll notice my arrow loaded pointing to the right. If you need to flip that, you should be able to click on this up here, reverse direction. And once again here you can play with spacing. You can play with the number of cuts. It looks a bit funny. I'm going to click the checkbox and we're going to see what it looks like. Hopefully it worked out. Cool, that's what I wanted. So now our handle has grips on it. The way to complete this, drag this down to get it to mirror. You'll notice that it only, because now that it's split, it only mirrored the top part of the body. You now might want to mirror this bottom part too. So again, you would click on the mirror feature, asking you what plane to mirror about, right plane, bodies to mirror, click on this, merge solids. You can uncheck propagate visual properties or not, doesn't matter. And now we have the bottom mirrored in the top. To complete this, you would add fillets. So again, to make this part line look real, I would put a 0.02 fillet or 0.04 anywhere in that realm on the top edge and on the bottom edge. And now when you render this, it's going to look real, like it's a clamshell handle, two parts that come together. And that will feel, it will feel more believable. We now have a part line in here. And again, it's all about realistic rendering. Does that part line make sense to everybody? If you follow just these little things, your renders will look more believable, as opposed to just having a dumb, like by dumb I mean just like just a solid body handle with nothing else to it. So I want to show you all how to make these embellishments to make your renders look real, but then also to add embellishments to add to your design. You could, for example, if you wanted to add more embellishments to this, if I turn lines back on, again, now we're off the sheet. You could like add a bevel to this. Maybe it would have been better to do this before the fillets. This probably won't work. There's probably a gap somewhere in here. Let's see. I'm just like copying this shape. I'm now going to the sketch tool and offsetting it so it's a bit bigger. I'm trying to very simply create a slightly wider shape here that when I now extrude it, I don't want to merge. Again, now it could look like the handle has a bit of a bezel on this side. If I want to match what I had on the knob that was built in the previous demo, you could add a chamfer to this. You have to play with the size here to get it to fit. You could probably do a curve-driven pattern cut on here if you wanted to try and match what was previously done here to get this kind of teardrop shape. Or you could kind of get this teardrop shape on the front face of this handle. So think about Project 2 as you're building these features and these details, that not only are you building to the brand, but within the family should also feel the same. And the simplest way to do that is with color and texture. So if you have like a grip texture on the knob, try and find a place to put a grip texture of that on the handle. The last thing I'm going to show you all is based on this razor that we passed around, this ribbing on the bottom. Again, this keeps it cheap. So this is like a two-part handle here. And we did that by adding this part line. If I roll this back up to before we mirror it, and actually I'm just going to go ahead and suppress these things. Here's a very simple way. So if you wanted to do like a transparent something or have a handle that's like looks a little cheaper or more industrial, a simple way to do this, I created a new sketch on the top plane. I'm going to create a small rectangle here that's centered on the origin. This will represent the thickness of the rib. So in this case, it's maybe like 0.1 inches thick. I can now select this sketch and pattern it. Again, playing with spacing and the number. It doesn't have to follow the curve. If I now go back to features and do an extruded cut, it's going to, and here I'm going to change the setting to through all both. It wants to create the cut on the inside of these rectangles, but you can also click flip side to cut. So it cuts to the outside of the rectangles. And now it's kind of hidden by this pop-up box. But once that disappears, if I change the feature scope, uncheck this, and only select this back piece, and now click this checkbox here. It should be through all both, sorry. We are now left with this kind of like really loose rib pattern. Again, this is beyond the sheet. I just want to show you all how to do that. I realize I kind of flew through a couple of things. The final thing to do here would be to select all of these, right click, and say combine. And now when I mirror this, oops, it forgot what we're mirroring. Sometimes you have to go in here and reselect the body, click check. We now have a handle that is kind of thinned out like this. Obviously you could go in and fillet it, take more time to make this look pretty. But that's how you might do a handle with like some of these details in. If you wanted to go like more in depth, you would probably shell it first. If anyone wants to do this, I can show them in more in depth. Yeah, Max. That's a good question. I'll be honest, I don't use the rib tool. The rib tool, I've seen it used as more of a finishing tool on like the inside cavity of a part. I think it makes making ribs easier. You can play with it. That's my advice. I don't know it, unfortunately. Cool. Any questions on this handle demo? Okay.